All right, everybody. We are just about ready to go with Zachary from LSU's And the Valley Shook. Thank you for the couple people who are here. Appreciate it. We'll jump right into this thing really soon. Just need to get him challenged. All right, and off we go. I start with the black pieces. Zachary's on with the white pieces, and I'm going to try to make this as informational as possible. So, in the opening parts of the game, we are looking to control these 4 central squares. That is the primary purpose of the opening part of the game. Of course, in addition, we want to make sure that all of our pieces get into action. So my opponent plays pawn on d2 to d3. This places a little bit of pressure on the e4 square, which is one of the central squares, and it also opens up the bishop. So I am going to play a similar move. I'm going to play pawn to e5. This controls the d4 square, opens up my bishop as well. It's a pawn to e4, following the same ideas, controls one of the central squares. In a really good chess game, you'll see the struggle of both players trying to control these central squares as well as getting their pieces involved. And speaking of getting our pieces involved, I think it's about time to get this knight into the game. Really like this move. It is controlling these 2 squares. And I'm not committing with any pawn moves right now. I'm not quite sure what pawn structure I'm going to go into yet. I figure I can turn my webcam on now that we are underway. All right, you can see my disheveled hair now. I think it's very appropriate for a chess player to have extremely disheveled hair. We're in a very long line of chess players that did not have pristine hair until recently, and it's kind of disappointing to me that your Caruanas, your Magnus Carlsens have pristine hair. I'm not a fan. Fan of them as players, not quite a fan of them with the hair, but what are you going to do? All right, so let's take a look at some of the themes in this position. All right. So here, let's take a look at this pawn. We're thinking about our candidate moves. We always want to consider our captures and checks, and I've got 2 captures available to me right now. I can consider taking the pawn on d4, and now I'm going to see, all right, if I take the pawn, what's going to happen? If the queen takes it back, then my knight will take the queen. So if queen takes d4, then knight takes, I win a queen. So make sure there's nothing funny here. I'm going to... Question is now, do I want to take with the pawn or the knight? I should be up a pawn after this. So I think I'm going to go with the knight. I like this because it keeps my pawn structure intact. You tend to not want to see 2 pawns. Like if I had taken with the pawn, I'd have 2 pawns in the same file. That's called double pawns. Makes the pawns quite a bit less effective in that situation. So still waiting on white here. So some of the themes of the position. Now that I'm up a pawn, basically I should be able to take this through the end game and hold it. So I'm okay with exchanging pieces, but notice that white has a little bit more activity. The queen is now active. There's a lot more potential for the bishops to get involved. So even though I'm up a pawn, I can't be too greedy here. I need to be as disciplined as possible. So this is a fine move, attacking my knight. Let's see, it's also threatening to win a pawn. So the question is, what's the best way to defend my knight here? I can either move it or defend it with a bishop. I could play bishop here. That would do a good job of developing the piece. But I don't like the fact that my knight would then be pinned to my bishop, and I'm just not feeling that move right now. I think I'm going to just retreat my knight, and I'm going to be okay with that right now. Yep, so I really like the bishop to e3 move. That's a move that makes a whole lot of sense in the position, creates a threat that I have to respond to. Sorry if I lost the stream there for a second. Apologize for that. Looks like it came back for me. Alright, so this knight move puts pressure on the e4 pawn, develops another piece, also helps contest the d5, the d5 square. So I'm a big fan of this move. Alright, so so this is called the pin. The bishop is putting pressure on this diagonal on my queen, so that if I were to move my knight, that means I would lose my queen. So I have to be really careful about that. But my opponent did take two moves to get the bishop all the way from c1 to g5. So I'm wondering if there's a way for me to take advantage of that. So I can either break the pin right now, and, or I could develop my, basically ignore it, develop my bishop to maybe c5. So I tend to feel that, another option is I could just ask where the bishop's going, play h6, and ask white, is he going to take or not. So I'll play here. Knight defends this pawn just fine, and now I'm renewing my threat to take on e4. So a couple moves that white might consider here are knight to c3 defending the pawn, or potentially bishop to d3. Not as big of a fan of it because it blocks the queen. However, that would allow castling. So right now my assessment of this position is that we are pretty darn equal. Alright, so g4 comes up. Looks like I should be able to take this pawn on e4 now. So I'm going to snatch that up. Alright, so there's definitely some pressure here. Knight's attacking. Knight's attacking the bishop on g5. He's going to need to move the bishop, or else say goodbye to the bishop. Alright, so I'm wondering if that was a mouse slip by some chance, but I am going to snatch that pawn, or snatch the bishop. Pawn takes f4. Now I'm up a pawn and a bishop, feeling pretty good about the game. Again, these positions can be really tricky to play. Especially when you're up some material, and my pieces aren't particularly well coordinated. For example, what I mean by they're not well coordinated is this knight isn't really doing anything. It's not defending any other pieces, nor is it being defended, and it's also on the center of the board and not controlling the center of the board. Like, it's attacking some of these squares, but it would be much more useful for me back on f6, where it could control some of these central squares. Bottom line is, this game's not over. Alright, so that's a fine move, developing the knight. I'm going to castle. Castling's a great move. If you don't castle, I highly recommend it. Protects your king by moving it in the corner. A lot of, I remember when I was coaching chess, a lot of newer players would be confused by castling, thinking that the king was more in danger in the corner. When there's a lot of pieces on the board, yes, the king is quite a bit safer in the corner, because really you can only attack the king from two directions. Whereas when the king's in the center of the board, you can attack the king from any direction. However, when we run to the end of the game, the king can eventually go back in the center and become a major player. So right now, what are my goals? My goals are to get all my pieces really well developed. If I can trade pieces, I will, but I'm not going to trade pieces in a way that slows my development. And I'm also going to see if I can take advantage of the king that's in the center. So some things that you want to keep in mind of when the king is in the center. First, you want to open up the board. And notice that the board's already opened up for me, and that there are no pawns in front of the king, basically. Another thing to keep in mind here is this f2 square is pretty weak. And we have an open e file. So if I can move my rook to e8, I can exert some pressure on the king. Alright, so that's a fine move. Getting ready to castle. Got a couple options here. I really want to get this bishop involved. And that this bishop has some problems in that it's got a couple pawns in front of it. So I might just move my pawn here. So I like this move. Opens the bishop to threaten this pawn. It also helps control the e4 square, and also my queen's defending pawn. So this move really solidifies my position. I don't think I've lost a piece yet, which is fine. So I was surprised at how easy it is to stream in this fashion. I'm using OBS software. I'm not even sure what that stands for. Well, it's remarkably easy to use, which I very much appreciate. All right, so the knight is not defended, so I'm just going to take it. Rule for any player out there: before you move a piece, making sure that it can't be taken by another piece. Pretty important. But still, you'd be surprised at how often I make mistakes like that. Just as I was warming up for this match, I made some terribly awful moves where I was just giving up pieces right and left. Hopefully I play better under pressure. On the clock, I've got a pretty solid time advantage. Just looking pretty good for me. So yeah, this is pretty much everything I wanted from this game. Alright, so that move makes sense, is defending the G4 square. So I'm kind of curious if it makes sense to sacrifice a piece here. Like, I'm really curious about sacrificing my knight on f2, but I think I should just play it safe, to be honest. So the f pawn is always really weak because it only has the king to defend it. So if you have the ability to attack that square, you definitely want to take advantage of it. Alright, so I'm gonna take that pawn, and yeah, right now we're in a spot where the king is open. I've been able to coordinate my pieces to put pressure on the king. So Zachary from And the Valley Shook has put up a really nice fight, but I'm feeling good about this one right now, and I'm sure that he's going to bring the pain next game. All right. So I'm going to play here with check. And I should have something good here soon. Yeah, so this is a all right. Let's see. So I just got to figure out how to get the knockout blow here. I'm thinking that Queen G3 should do it. That allows me to make this pressure, potentially checkmate on the back row. Yeah, so even though I'm up some material, one of the big problems for white is that you have these pieces kind of dangling over here. I'm not even sure how long that bishop was there. Yeah, the bishop's been on pre for a while. But really my goal is to get checkmate. Coco the Papaya says there's 3 things that can happen when you on Pasan, and 2 of them are bad. Alright, so Queen takes D5. I don't think that's going to change my path forward here too much. I'm afraid I don't think it will. So if my opponent plays rook takes, I'm just simply going to recapture. And I can play here. Drops the queen. And I probably played this really sloppily, so feel free to judge me with all your might at the end here. Alright, then this should be checkmate. So I will send a message. And I am going to... Alright, let's do a rematch. Alright, so now I got the white pieces. I'm going to start off with my common move, pawn to e4. So we're playing 2 games, and the first one to 1.5 points wins. So if I just get a draw here in this game, then I take away the match victory. I need to update the score to 1-0. Here we go. Alright, so pretty strong move. Hopefully get a little bit of a different battle this time. Pretty similar to last game. Both of these moves, really smart. They're controlling the center, open up the bishop, both sides, and now this knight to f3 attacks the pawn, and the big question is how is he going to defend? And he plays the Philidor defense. So I'm going to strike in the center, play d4. One of the things that this move does opens up this bishop. I got both bishops going. This move here, pawn to d6, is just fine. There's nothing wrong with it, except it blocks this dark squared bishop in. So sometimes black can get into a bit of an issue with not getting this black bishop, the dark squared bishop, activated. So we'll see what Zachary does to try to get the dark squared bishop activated. But that's usually the question for black in these positions. Okay, so I remember preparing for this move. This is kind of a dynamic move. Attacking the e4 square. I think I can take here. So if I play pawn takes e5, pawn takes e5, that's going to open up the d file. I can exchange queens. The king has to move over. And then I can probably take the pawn on e5. And my opponent can't simply take this piece because then I can fork the king and the rook on f7. So I should be able to safely take here and maybe win a pawn, but maybe not, because my opponent doesn't have to take on d6. But, so do I like that? Let's see. I think the best idea here is just to play knight to c3. So even though there is this line of moves that allows me to win a pawn, I'm not convinced that that's the right way to go about this. I'm just going to stick to principles of developing my knight, defending the pawn on e4, and further controlling the d5 square. So again, everything we're doing is centered around these 4 squares. And the beginning of any chess game, from all the way down to my level up to the master's level, you're going to see that. All right, so this move is interesting. I think I can, let's see. I'm probably going to take here. No, that would leave my e4 square behind. I really hate these types of positions when you have 4 pawns stuck here in the center. It really bugs me. In positions like this, you just gotta calculate it. You just have to look deep in the position and see what's there. Yeah, I think taking here is good. It puts the pressure on the knight, you know where you're gonna go. And if the knight does take here, I can still play queen takes and be up a pawn after that exchange. So I feel pretty good about this one. I feel like now is the time to take on e5. So that's kind of a good principle. Sometimes playing a good move can get better if you wait a move by simply developing your piece, specifically in the opening. It's really tempting when you see something like, oh, maybe I can win a pawn here, to go chasing it. Sometimes it's worth it. Sometimes it's not, and sometimes that opportunity will only be better the next time around. All right, so I think my opponent ignored the fact that I'm threatening the knight here, so I'm just going to swap that off. And I think this game's both of these games are gonna be really instructive in post-game analysis. I think there's a couple of ways that I think we could make some plans to improve on these openings. Particularly if you go all the way back to the beginning. In both games, my opponent moved the d-pawn twice. So if we go all the way back to the beginning, so here, this d-pawn moved once, and of course my opponent moved now, and then moved it again later. So usually in the opening, you got one piece. You don't want to move it twice because there's an opportunity cost. Right. Yeah. All right, so we just traded a couple pieces here. Alright, so one of the tactical patterns that you need to be aware of is a fork. So you have one piece attacking two pieces. And this fork is particularly common. And my opponent has to move the king, and that means the rook is gone. And the rook is slightly more valuable than the knight, so I'm very happy with that trade. So the queens are off the board. I'm up a little bit of material. So he's checked me. I'm just going to block the check. And one thing I love about playing online chess is you can pre-move. So if my opponent captures, I can make that next move no matter what. You can cancel it if you need to. Alright, so now I'm going to castle long, prove my king, get my rook involved in the game, put some pressure on the enemy king there. Okay, so I'm going to play a discovered check. So notice that my rook is not attacking the king right now, but once I move my bishop out of the way, now my opponent's in check, which is going to be a big problem because my opponent can't resolve check and recapture the bishop. So that basically wins a piece for me. Alright, so I'm just going to trade off here, see if I can get my rook involved. This might be pretty rough to come back from. So bishop's covering here, rook's covering these squares, so all I need to do is put check on the king, and there we have checkmate. So thanks everybody for watching, and if anyone wants to play a blitz game, I am happy to do that. Feel free to challenge me. I'm gonna pop in and say good game to Zachary. Alright, so if anyone wants to play, you can quick jump on and play a blitz game. I know there's not a ton of people watching, but I don't care. This is more for me than it is for you. Well, it's a little bit for you. So Zach mentioned well and bad before, but you know, I mean, bad is a really tough thing to say in chess. Like, who's really good or who's really bad. I mean, there's really only a couple people that are actually good at this game, and they make the rest of us look like complete morons. So, sort of like with anything else. Like, you can be good at math, you can be bad at math, but really, what does that mean? And the context is way more important. So, I am going to head out and play a couple blitz games. If you want to hang around, you can. If you don't, you don't have to. Alright, so this is a 3-minute time control. This game's going to go by much more quickly. So right now this is the Ruy Lopez defense. I'm attacking this knight, which is defending the pawn. We get this like dynamic play for the center. So even though my bishop's on the side of the board, and I'm pretty sure I need to castle here. So this is all theory. This is the Berlin defense made famous by Garry Kasparov. And was it made famous by Garry Kasparov? Or my mind is telling me that it wasn't. Oh well. So that's an interesting move. I think I can just... I think I can just do this. Take here. Right? Can I do that? Because if he takes my knight back, I can fork the bishop and the knight. Interesting. So I think I can just put my bishop here and ask you, how are you going to defend the f7 pawn? Yeah, I think that's really, yeah. So again, my e4 pawn is still hanging, but my opponent has to continue to defend my threats. So sometimes defending is more about posing threats that your opponent can't ignore. So more of a dynamic defense. Oh my goodness. I just blundered that piece. This is what I was talking about before. You could have just taken my bishop. Oh my goodness, what a gift. Woof! Ooh! Man! I am so off my game. All right, looks like we are out of viewers. It's just me in here. So we're gonna end the stream. I'm probably gonna lose this one, but that's okay. Thanks everybody for who was here, who watched. Appreciate it very much. We're gonna pop over to the postgame. All right, the people have demanded that I come back. Who would have thought? So to the very few people who are in the audience, create an account on chess.com, challenge me, see what you got, try to bring it. So I'm up a pawn here. I just gave up a pawn, but I have some opportunities to infiltrate on the 7th rank, which is really where you want your rooks to go, if we're going to be honest with each other. You want your rooks on the 7th rank. They were born to be put on the 7th rank. That's where they belong. So I think we're going to lose a pawn, just because I am running out of gas. Ooh, I don't like that move. That allows me to play like this. Now I get to double my rooks up there. Whew! Now this is a sight. When you have your rooks set up like this on the 7th rank, just to munch on all those pawns, that is the life. I'm gonna take this one, and then I'm gonna take this one or this one. Yeah. All of a sudden, Bobby's not looking so bad here. I'm not even sure how much time I have left. But yeah, how are you going to defend this? I mean, my rook's in the perfect spot. You're going to have to defend laterally. That is beautiful. This is what you live for, right? As a chess player, it's this position. Oh, and I can get behind my pawn. Yeah, this is it. This is how you play chess. Yeah, this is how you play chess, ladies and gentlemen. Remove that. Yeah, I don't believe. I think that I can just get myself a queen this way. I really don't want to. Here we go. I think my time's looking pretty bad. If this is a draw, I'm gonna be so mad at myself. Okay, I am... Oh, brutal. No! No! Ah! It's gonna be a draw. Oh. This is like a brutal draw. Oh. You gotta be kidding me. You gotta be kidding me. So this is a draw. Whenever you have a position like this with the pawn on the end, it's a draw. Basically, I just need to shuffle my king back and forth here. It's gonna be a draw. Oh, so mad. It's a stalemate. All right. That's it. We're gonna end on a low note. Alright, so I'm officially out. Thanks for watching. So mad at that game. I'll look at it in the morning and see where I went wrong. But man, that is frustrating.